It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome, Brian Chau. We are streaming on many platforms, supposedly. Oh yeah, we are. Here we are. We are on Substack. It's been a little wonky. They're getting their Substack stream set up, but we are on there. We're on many other platforms. Brian Chau is the man behind From the New World. It's a great Substack, a great podcast. One of the smartest guys who's ever been on this podcast by far. Great on the topic of AI. Really the guy you want to talk about AI, and he's an AI optimist. Overall, a techno optimist, I would say. So always great to hear from you, and thank you for being here, Brian.
Glad to be here.
Yes. You and I had one of the best discussions I've ever had about art that I still think about and talk about to this day, about how art must be revelatory. I use that all the time. I say this constantly, and I think I got that entirely from you. So everybody should go back and listen to that episode. I think that was maybe I can't remember if that was on your podcast or my podcast.
Yeah, we talked about this for a long time on my podcast.
Yeah.
About art as unveiling.
Art as unveiling, exactly, yeah.
The kind of cyclical nature of art culture. Yeah, that was fantastic talk.
Yeah, and I really learned so much from that, because that unveiling thing, it really helped me to understand a lot of my feelings about art and why it works the way it does. So anyway, I'll put that in the links, but we want to talk about the ZIZIANS, which you did a fantastic almost true crime piece on, which was the first I'd seen that. But before we get into that, let's hear your take of what's happening with the economy. Are we screwed? Did the tariffs screw us, or what's your take?
My big takeaway from it, before actually answering your question, the big takeaway from it was that elite theory is kind of fake, or at least kind of fake as applied to the right. Maybe it just applies to the left, because all of the elite elements of the right, whether it's the tech people, whether it's the academics, some of the academics supported tariffs. But I think the general idea I think most people agree to this now, of what happened with the Trump tariffs is that he just did whatever he wanted. Maybe Muran suggested some things, maybe Peter Navarro suggested some things, but mostly he just did what he wanted. So it's really it's not an oligarchy. It's not it's not the iron law of oligarchy. It's not the Curtis.
Yarvin down bad. Yarvin down bad.
Yeah, it is just whatever Trump wants.
Right. Okay, so and what's happening? I mean, I saw some green text on 4chan that was he's trying to drive the something interest rate to zero so he can get the debt payments down, and then he's gonna, triple reverse X and Y, the bond rate, some sort of 5D chess where we're gonna end up on top. Are you feeling bullish or bearish?
Yeah, so that theory is basically there's the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is supposed to not be under the control of the president. And the idea is that if Trump does more tariffs and there's more stock market problems, and maybe they'll lower the interest rate, which I think the causal effect, that's pretty reasonable to think that is the exact reason. Really, all of the explanations that we have figured out the exact reason why Trump set the tariffs how he did. All of those seem pretty unconvincing to me. In general, my position is we need a slow decoupling from China. I'm accepting of the idea that we need an even faster decoupling from China. I think the main tension is that it's hard to decouple from China and impose tariffs on everyone else at the same time, right? When you have very concentrated leverage, this really helps you. And part of the problem there is that, you won't get everything reshored to America. You'll probably get some things, especially with the existing combination of subsidies and so on. But you'll get a lot of things going to like other allied countries, right? Going to Europe, going to, Canada or Mexico and so on, right? It won't just be like all of the countries or all of the companies leaving China, all of the manufacturing leaving China. It won't just go to America if we try to concentrate our efforts on China. But it will make it so that it's at least in allied countries, right? And I think if you're really worried about China first and foremost, and that's the right thing to do, is to just kind of, what's called friendshoring, try to get it on all of your allies, so that you do a war with China, and it's not like, if there's the case of a war with China, then there's not going to be as much damage. That I think is like the pro case for tariffs. I'm generally supportive of, and the current thing now. I mean, like, we're seeing the stock crash. We're seeing the stock crashes just more broadly. And I think part of that is like rational, because it is just a lot on not just China, but on like a lot of allied countries as well.
Wait, what's rational?
Like the stock market declines, I think they're a reaction to both increased prices and just like more possible retaliation, and just like a worse circumstance for like a lot of the allied countries involved, especially.
Well, it sure will be interesting. I mean, I've been trying to be in favor of tariffs for like 9 years. I've been really in favor of it for a very long time, and it's very funny to see it actually happening.
It's
My sense, though, is this is not going to be the bloodbath that people think. The bloodbath is going to come in a way that we don't expect. It's gonna come from some sort of war or some sort of thing. The thing is, it's really only very recently that index funds were allowed to invest the way that they invest now, which is passively, right? That's a brand new thing. So the market isn't the same today as it was in 2008. Index funds didn't own every single stock in 2008. They do now because passive investment was allowed. It didn't used to be allowed in the way that it is today. So, there really are way fewer players in terms of the overall ownership of stock than there were before, because there just weren't these massive behemoth passive investors that own like the pensions of every nation on earth, right? So I really do feel like the incentives, especially on like the New York Stock Exchange, it's going to be pretty hard to get that thing to crash, because you're going to need those passive investors to pull their money. And the likelihood of that happening is like pretty small, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so
it's
I don't
just
think
like
it's
a lot
gonna
of
be that bad.
unconscious. It's just a lot of people holding forever. Is that the idea?
Yeah, well, no, but passive investors aren't even allowed to take the money out. At least in the, I forget exactly what the rule is, but I think it's like year by year or something. So it's like they can't even panic if they wanted to in a lot of ways. So like it's a pretty different market than it was before. But
right, and the result is like you get margin called, or you get like de facto margin called, right? There are some like the specific triggers, and there's this at a practical level. If you're like a normal person, you need to make rent, and you dip into your 401k or your other savings or your other just stock investments, hopefully not your 401k, right? And then there's a version of this at the institutional level, which is basically people going bankrupt, and especially if they have over leveraged positions, that's like actually pretty easy. Not sure I've heard of any big bankruptcies, so so far, fingers crossed, we're safe from that now.
it'll be interesting to see what happens. I again, my sense is that until there's a genuine war, which will happen, we're not going to see the market crash. But who knows? I could totally be wrong. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right,
Are you a like war with China soon kind of guy? Like that's gonna happen
look,
soon?
I don't want to like go to war with any.
Or,
I don't
like,
want to
not
go to
whether you
war with
want to,
China.
like whether it's gonna happen.
I don't really see there being a hot war with China. Like first, it's going to be some kind of domino. It's going to be some kind of domino effect where something happens with Israel, something happens with somebody else. Whoops, NATO. and then boom, dominoes. It'll be like World War One, right? It's like where
So you're
suddenly
more worried about the Middle East, or more worried about Ukraine, and
yeah,
less about
it'll
like
be
Taiwan,
dominoes of coalitions, and then somebody will invade somebody, and it'll be known that that's World War Three, and we will have a World War Three. It's like it's gonna happen probably in our lifetime, and it'll be known as World War Three. It'll probably involve China, and yeah, it'll be a bunch of battle lines being drawn, and it's gonna go down for sure. And I for one am ready. I obviously I have kids now. I don't want to see this happen, but it's like. War is the father of all things, as Herodotus says. So, what about you? What do you think is going to happen with China?
Yeah, I think that I'm like a China middle timeline guy. I know people who are a lot more like war with China in 5 years, right? And I know people who are like, it'll never happen, it's the end of history, nothing ever happens. I feel like I know people on both sides of the spectrum. I don't know that many people who are like, it'll be like 20 years, right? I think that's why I think that in some ways, like I was talking about the kind of realists and the intellectuals in the Trump administration. I think that in some ways the realists got screwed by the current strategy, because the realists are like all in on China, like or pivot to Asia, or like all in on China as in all military, civilian aspects of policy should be all in opposing China. From that frame of mind, the priority of tariffs would be more just getting things out of China and less kind of putting economic leverage on our other allies, right? So I've often described myself like a few times as like a yes tariffs on China, like no tariffs on Japan kind of guy, right? Because we just need to like orient basically our side in World War III against their side.
I think that's pretty much exactly right. Yeah.
And that's why I thought, I expected much more of a tariff strategy that was like that, because I had been kind of seeing both J.D. Vance's speech, their approach to Europe, some executive orders that Trump put out related to that, and also, like, funny enough, the like leaked group chat where I think JD was really the realist voice and Pete Hegseth was kind of backing it up. So I was like really optimistic. I was like, realists in control. But this seems to be, a different. Once again, like Dark Elves L, right?
They keep losing. Okay. All right. Well, we could talk about this all day, and I actually really do want to talk about your great work on the ZIZIANS. So let's talk about the ZIZIANS. It was really funny when I read your piece, because that same day or whatever, that same week that you published this, the Chaos documentary dropped on Netflix, which is the story of Charles Manson. And there are so many parallels. I know a lot about that Charles Manson thing, because I've read like several books on it. There are so many parallels between the ZIZIANS and Charles Manson. It's like almost not identical, but it's very, very similar kind of thing. So let's just start from the very beginning. Who are the ZIZIANS? Let's just define it, and then we'll get into the crimes. We'll get into everything they did, faking their own deaths, which I don't think most people know. So, let's just tell the story from the beginning.
They're the trans vegan AI murder cult. Haven't you heard of the trans vegan AI murder cult?
Trans vegan AI murder cult, yes.
It is pretty crazy. The most famous thing they're known for is murdering several people, including a border patrol agent. But there's a really deep story. You're exactly right that it like goes into this sort of tried and true tradition of Bay Area radicals, of the Manson family, of the Jim Jones types, where there's like, it's kind of crazy to call them like the moderate version of the kind of like radical left ideology, and then there's the Jim Jones version, right, which is like even crazier and is like drinking the Kool-Aid and is building the compound in South America, so on and so forth. But it's kind of like that, where this is actually something we talked about last time. There's a bunch of people called the rationalists, right?
Sorry, my camera went down, which is happening a lot recently, but it'll go back up in a second, so don't worry.
Okay, should I just
keep
stop
going.
for now?
No, I'm back. Keep going. Don't worry. If that happens, don't worry.
So there's a bunch of people called the rationalists, which they draw a lot of their inspiration from behind their ideology. Ziz cites them constantly. Ziz, the founder of the ZIZIANS, cites them constantly. The other group members cites them constantly. But it, once again, is a kind of Jim Jones, normal SF radicals, where there's some overlap, there's some cross-communication, but at this point, like a lot of the more mainstream rationalists, effective altruists, AI safety people have now retroactively denounced the ZIZIANS. But that's where it starts. And some of the ideas that they kind of bring in is this idea of like mental technology, that they want to rewire people's psychology, both inside of the cult and outside of it, and that they can reprogram people to have the most rational ideas. Another is this like dual multiple personality thing that they kind of draw elements from mainstream psychology from, but also go a lot further and go into kind of weird psychological experiments. And then the big thing is like AI doom, right? They think AI is going to kill everyone. This is something that a lot of the effective altruists, even like the mainstream effective altruists think, but they take their next step of logic of like, okay, AI is going to kill everyone. It is better to kill some people than for AI to kill everyone. And so we're going to start killing people.
Right. That's where you go over the edge, where it's the rationalism is fundamentally about reducing harm. It's this ultra utilitarian philosophy that grounds a lot of the people in Silicon Valley. I've written about them in the Vibe Camp. I've gone to Vibe Camp. I've dealt with these people, and they're very harm reductionist. Everything is a calculation of reducing harm, and they actually exist all over the world. There's chapters of them everywhere, and they're basically ultra utilitarian. So they're like, if we can save 37 cents on our coffee every day, that saves 7 African children per day. We need to do that. If we're not, we're murdering the African children. And everything is this like hyper utilitarian calculation. And they sort of bleed dry life of all of its spice because it's like we just need to have perfect flatness and utilitarianism. But of course, you can take that ideology and you can say, well, some people deserve to die, and that'll help. It's the trolley problem, right? If we kill these people, more people will live over here. So, any ideology taken to its extreme can justify murder. And this group, called the ZIZIANS, is that group who has taken rationalism to the degree of murder.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And sometimes you see within the mainstream effective altruism, AI safety movement calls for state violence, right? They're like, we should airstrike foreign countries' data centers if they try to do AI research. That's something that one of the founders of AI safety, Eliezer Yudkowsky, has said. But to a large extent, they've come short of advocating for kind of extra state violence, things done outside of like the U.S. military or the U.S. police. And This is where the ZIZIANS really break from them. So they kind of they kind of agree on the ends, but they agree on the means, but they disagree on the ends. And to add one aspect to the kind of like bare life reductionist version of this, that's sort of where the veganism comes in, right? They have this concept called utils. Have you heard of the utils?
Oh no, I have not heard the utils. What's utils? So
the utils is like a unit of utility. Often, they consider it like a unit of happiness or a unit of, or like pain is like negative utils. They're like, how do we reduce the most utils? So one of the
pure
theories,
utilitarianism. This is John Stuart Mill, right? This is like pure.
Yeah, or Mill takes it from Bentham, but yeah, these people like really are inspired by Bentham, both the mainstream ones and the ZIZIANS. And then they kind of take it to one other level where Ziz has like these really strong epithets for the people who like eat meat. I think she calls them vampires at some times, or like she, he, whatever. Has called themselves like a vegan, transgender, anarchist, rationalist, and so all of these, this entire group sees it's once again this expansion of what they're justified in doing, right? It's like, okay, if we live in this really dark world where animals are in some ways equal to human life and equally capable of suffering, and people are doing all of this harm to animals, then so what if we kill a few people? And it's the same deal with AI, right? It's all of these hypothetical people in the future. If AI comes in the future and kills all of humanity, which is what they sincerely believe, like both the kind of more moderate, effective altruists and the ZIZIANS, then once again, the ZIZIANS believe they're justified in killing some people in order to get that, or in order to prevent that. And you see the situation where, all of these abstract lives are being put on the scale against people who they end up shooting or stabbing and so on. And that's how this process really plays itself out.
Well, and one of the people they killed was their landlord. So it's like, who really would, who's really harshing the utils is our landlord. And he definitely deserves to die. Funny how that always works
one of the things that people have said about the ZIZIANS, which I kind of agree with, is that it's like the extreme version of you can just do things, right? That it's like, you can just stop paying your bills, you can just ignore the police, and if your landlord shows up to confront you, you can just stab him. So in like 2022, I think, they end up getting in a confrontation with their landlord, a guy named Curtis Lind, who is at this point 80 years old. And this entire story is kind of crazy because they end up like parking a few box trucks in like an empty lot. So they're living in this like really weird setup, and they're renting it from this 80-year-old guy. And this 80-year-old guy like asks them like, "Hey, you guys, you're staying in this lot. You really should pay rent." And then this is during COVID, so they have like this rent moratorium, and then they don't pay rent for some time. And they're like, this is the law. We can exploit the law because you can just do things.
Yeah, right. So anything is justifiable, and with
and then you escalate this more and more, and then it's at some point they say, or I think like someone else quotes them as saying, it's like, oh, it's reasonable to avoid rent and prevent themselves from being evicted, for the greater good, right? So it's once again, it's like you can just do things, you can just not pay your rent.
Okay. Wait. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and then end of 2022 rolls around.
Wait. Hold on. Before we get too deep, where's the beginning? Because it starts in 2019. There's this showdown with CFAR. So how does this start? There's a great image in the beginning of this initial showdown where people get locked in. So what is CFAR? How does the story begin?
Yeah. So this is CFAR is essentially one of the normie. I say all of these. It's like the crazy and then like more crazy, right? So like let's say the less crazy but still kind of crazy rationalists. It stands for the Center for Applied Rationality, CFAR. That's what CFAR is, and it's run by a lot of the same people we talked about earlier, the rationalists, the AI safety people, and they're renting out like this cabin in the woods, basically. And then, so they have this event scheduled in the cabin of the woods. The ZIZIANS hear word of this, and they're like, it's the kind of classic like left on left violence kind of thing. But it's like they think the CFAR people are, so the CFAR people are like, really worried about AI killing everyone, but are like, not in favor of individual violence, so on. And they basically think, the ZIZIANS basically think CFAR isn't radical enough. And so so like one of the quotes from this is like, they do not appreciably develop novel rationality mental tech. And there's some like AI stuff, and then they basically go in and they like surround this cabin, and they kind of block them in, and they're doing like this protest where they're like locking everyone in. And the thing
They
that
literally
actually
lock
happens,
the people. So who's they? You got to say who they are first.
oh, so the
because
ZIZIANS
we know who
like block all the
Seafar
people
is.
in. Yeah, this is they block off all the doors to the cabin, and the
No,
thing
no,
that
no. But
actually
who
happened.
is? But hold on. Who is the ZIZIANS? Because we know who Seafar is. So who are the ZIZIANS?
So the ZIZIANS are, the ZIZIANS are the like more extreme. They're the AI. They're the trans vegan AI murder cult.
Right, but who are they? Like, they were part of. Did they break off from CFAR? Who's their leader? Like, who is this group that has broken off from CFAR?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So they're founded by this guy, Jack LaSoda.
Whose name is Jack LaSoda? Yes.
Yeah. And
Right.
Ziz basically starts writing in the same ecosystem as CFAR and all of these other rationalists.
Right. Okay.
He
So
starts
this-
off writing and is very interested in the main ideas the rationalists talk about, kind of rationality, what he calls mental tech, saving the animals, AI killing everyone, just very interested in the same issues. And then Ziz just starts taking these things more and more seriously, developing the system of reprogramming and of a dual hemispheres. Do you want to get into this? About the dual
No,
hemispheres?
let's not get in. I want to just like the story. So we have CFAR. It's this very rationalist, kind of lefty utilitarian group. They're sitting around thinking about all the ways to save the world. And then there's this group of people led by this guy, Jack LaSoda, who's trans, named Ziz for some reason. Do we know why his name is Ziz?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. So for some reason, his name is Ziz. And he gathers this little collective of radicals of the radicals, like they're the super radicals, and they literally imprison the other group at
So let me end the story, because there's a twist. So they have all these flyers. They're protesting CFAR. They're protesting this like less crazy, these like less crazy AI safety rationalist people. And then it turns out they haven't even shown up yet. And the people they actually locked in this cabin were like literal kids. So these literal kids were like having their like, I don't know, camp program in the cabin. And they don't even like, they don't like look inside. They just like lock all of the doors. And they're waving like down with CFAR everywhere. CFAR is lying to you. And things of this nature, and turns out it's like completely different people. And so these come in, they arrest a bunch of them. They start like writing them up for charges, and that's how this opening act ends.
Got it. So they get arrested for imprisoning children, because that's what they're doing, and they get charged with an array of felonies, as you say: conspiracy, false imprisonment, child endangerment. So these are felonies, and they're all being led by this guy, Jack LaSoda, who is 28. I don't know if this is at the time or if he's 28 now, because this is 2019. And his name, his name is Ziz. So who is this guy Ziz? What do we know about LaSoda?
So Ziz is a former rationalist, or maybe he still considers himself a rationalist, but the rationalists, the less crazy rationalists, have distanced themselves and banned him off of their forums and so on. But he grew up in this milieu. He kind of comes from the tech world, computer science world, and goes to the Bay, joins some of these Bay Area blogs and communities and group houses, and then gets really interested in essentially the normie, like I say normie again, the effective altruist ideas, right? and then he starts blogging. He writes this blog called Sinceriously and starts commenting on all of these same discussion topics. So the veganism, the AI, they stem from this same community.
Right. So he's a guy in this scene, and he's got Sinceriously. And and then he for some reason defects. Do we have a sense of why he defects from the sort of mainstream CFAR effective altruist?
Yeah, we know a lot about that because he talks constantly and in very very unabashed ways about this, very sinceriously ways about this.
Very sincerely.
So one anecdote that people tell all the time is that he sent this like mass email to the CFAR people, and he's like, if you do not want to die, you need to learn how to escape containment. If you do not want to die with this plague consuming our world, then tend your hopes back to the hard-to-define things that generated these institutions that no longer deserve them.
Whoa.
This is basically an anarchist.
Scaring the hose.
Going to hell.
Yeah.
And Ziz thinks, I can kind of see if you are already someone who believes that AI is going to kill the world and that that eating animals is this great evil. I can kind of see how you make that leap, right? It's like, you already think the world is going to end, but you're not even willing to kill a few people. You're not even willing to basically break the rules to stop that. I can kind of see how he makes this jump from, the world is going to end, but all we got to do is write blog posts about it, to well, the world is going to end, so we might as well start killing people.
Yeah.
And their separation, the separation between Ziz and CFAR and the other rationalists, is basically centered on this: is how much can you just do things? How much can you break the rules? How much can you break all of the moral norms that came before you?
Right. Wow. Okay. So yeah, and this is what happens. This is how cults get started, and especially violent cults. And okay, so we have this sort of radical group that's spun off of effective altruism. They're like almost all trans, right? Almost all of them, if not all of them. I think, are they all trans?
Yeah, there were a few that weren't. Daniel Blank, I think, is not trans. It's just a guy. People go back and forth sometimes. Yeah. That's why they all have their split names there.
So, it must be so
whether
fun.
any one of them is trans at any given point in time is not entirely certain.
Wait, here I want to show this great graphic you have. So here we have this graphic of the ZIZIANS, and here they're choosing their names. It must be so fun to choose your name when you become trans. That's got to be one of the funnest things, to like give yourself a new name.
That's one of the selling points.
Yeah, and it's always like
when
Juniper.
You consider it, is that what you put in the pros column?
Yeah. It's like, new name. That's fun. What are the most common? It's like Juniper or Violet. They always choose these names. But anyway, the names that these people choose
and a quick clarification. I think it's from the link right before, but the graphic is not. I didn't make the graphic.
Okay. Well, sorry. Whatever. This is not like a super artistic graphic, but okay. So we have they're changing their names from things like Maximilian to Audir. That's a good trans name. And then Alexander changes his name to Somni Lethem, and Joseph becomes Gwen Danielson. Suri becomes Tessa Burns. Jack, of course, becomes Ziz, or is, I can't really tell what that is. And and then when Felix becomes Ophelia. This one I don't get, but Teresa to Milo, is this a trans the other direction? Is this a trans Milo Youngblood?
No, I think Teresa is the trans name. Teresa is the name that this person uses.
I see. This is just reversed. Yeah, it's just reversed. Okay, cool. All right. So you got these people. Why are they all trans? Do we know why they all happen to be trans? It's just a coincidence, or
I don't think it's coincidence. Some part, there are basically like anecdotal stories that Ziz would go around a lot of these trans communities and recruit them, single them out for recruitment. I think that there's an aspect of Ziz's philosophy, if you can call it that, that really, I mean, obviously, like, not all trans people, not all trans rationalists ended up in the Ziz cult. But what he says about like dual minds and having to reprogram your mind and having different identities, I can see how that's sympathetic disproportionately to a lot of trans people.
Yeah, because it's sort of separation.
Not always end well for them. There was this time, I think there's actually been several cases of this, but I only mentioned one in the article, and some people have like DM'd me saying like, oh, there was all these other cases. But someone who ended up changing their name to Maya had an encounter with the ZIZIANS. The ZIZIANS basically tried to convince her. I'm not sure if this person is trans or not. I just put this in as a kind of footnote. This wasn't the main thrust of the article. But they were essentially convincing people that they had split identities and there were new identities that were thinking in different ways, kind of like multiple personality thing. And for Maya, at least, this ended up, resulting in her suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
It's sad.
And
yeah, well, look, I mean, this is a dangerous path. It's a dangerous path. Once you start disassociating from your identity, it's hard to come back down to earth, which we've seen. But okay, let's get back to the story. So we got
good way to put it. It's a kind of disassociation. People feel unrooted from their desires, from their habits, from their own psychology. They feel, in some sense, at war with themselves, and that's something that Ziz writes about constantly, is being at war with yourself, being at war internally. That's something that may have been attractive to many of these people.
It's interesting. Why do you think so? I mean, and I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but why is it that so many people in tech have this? Is it just because they're in front of the computer all day, so they start to kind of like go crazy? Like, that's what I think it is. Like, why are so many tech guys who really spend a lot of time in front of the computer, why are so many of them struggling with this internal torment of desire and trans and all this stuff? Do you have a sense of why?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is this online world. Like, you're going into this online world. For a lot of people in tech, they feel sort of isolated from the real world, and so the place that they find peace, the place that they find all of their closest friends, the place where they can actually make a living, that's all the internet. And so they feel really distant from the real physical world. There's a lot of escapism, there's a lot of transhumanism. They feel like their physical experience is a barrier. The thing they really want to get to is the internet, right? That's where people appreciate them. That's where they actually make money. They're financially rewarded. It's these two worlds, and it feels, for many people, including many people I know personally, that the digital world is just better. And in the digital world, you can customize your avatar, and you can adopt a lot of these, like, really drastic changes. No one knows if you're a cat on the internet, right, as the saying goes. And I do think it is pretty close to monocausal that this is the main reason why there is so much disassociation among
because
people
it's true.
who love
it's like
spending their time on the internet.
Yeah, and this is why identity becomes so important, because it's true. It's like you're dealing with a world where you can basically choose your identity, and then a world where you cannot. And that is frustrating for people who really, really triple down on the internet. That has got to be a really frustrating thing, because they're like, well, I am this thing here, and then I'm not this thing here. So of course they're at constant war with themselves. And you feel for people like that. I get it. I get it. Anyway, all right, let's get back to the story. So they do this thing. They falsely imprison these children, They get felonies, and then what happens? That's 2019. So after that, what happens?
They basically stall out the charges. They avoid police, and they basically just don't comply with the courts. And at this time, it's basically COVID era, and so law enforcement is, will we say, a bit lax. So they basically get away with postponing these court dates or not complying with them. They basically get away with that until things escalate even more. And that takes us into the whole story with their landlord, right?
Yeah.
So they're
keep going.
So their landlord, Curtis Lind, at some point in mid-November in 2022. So this is around 3 years after the incident with CFAR and the children. He basically is in the same room with them. Many people theorize, I think pretty reasonably, that he was trying to finally collect rent because they hadn't been paying rent for years at this point. And then something escalates. There's no clear timeline. There's kind of differing accounts. But the mainstream theory goes that one of them, Somni Alexander, tries to or successfully stabs Curtis Lind, and then
with a sword.
Fires, yeah, with a literal sword.
With a literal sword.
Yeah, so they're just there with a sword. Their landlord shows up. There's a confrontation. They stab him with the sword, and then he shoots Emma Borhanian, who is another one of the ZIZIANS who was there. And Emma ends up dying, and Curtis actually survives. So Curtis survives. Police show up. They take Curtis to the hospital. They arrest a lot of the other people. And then the ZIZIANS say that, the ZIZIANS say that it was self-defense. And then Ziz does one of the classic Ziz things, which is that he fakes basically having a heart attack, going unconscious, and then they take him to the hospital, and he just leaves. Which is you can just do things, right? You can just fake a heart attack. You can just fake a medical emergency. That does seem provably to be one of the things that you can sometimes do. But this is really the thing that happens. Something else that comes up again and again with Ziz is a lot of the time when they arrest him, he'll just lie there, he'll pretend to be unconscious.
Plays dead.
Pretend to be dead, and they end up having to move him. They stop falling for this, but they end up having to move him, and this kind of total refusal to comply, total adversarialism. This is something that ends up characterizing the ZIZIANS, that they just do over and over again, and fits in really well with their philosophy, right?
Somebody is asking, was the sword a katana? I don't know. What kind of sword was it? Is there a picture of the sword? Do we know what type of sword?
I'm going to try to find a picture of the sword.
It's a very good question.
Yeah, this was mostly recorded on a blog post, which I traced back as the original source for a lot of the
this less wrong.
For a lot of the news articles as well around this. So I don't think the blog post appears not to have a picture of the sword.
Well, somebody get us a picture of the sword who's listening, and we'll share it. But okay, so what's incredible here is the parallels between Manson, because first of all, we have people killing people that aren't the cult leader, right? And kind of on behalf of the cult leader-ish. And then also the funny thing about Manson is his whole thing was he did cookie time or whatever. Every time he got arrested, he would act super, super crazy, which kind of got him out of stuff because people were just whoa, this guy's really crazy. And he would dance around and say crazy stuff. Whereas Ziz is doing the polar opposite, which is just basically pretending like he's dead, which is sorry for laughing. I know none of this is funny, but it's just, it's very weird. So Yeah. So Ziz is going about playing dead after this thing. I'm assuming the other two get arrested. And then, but somehow Ziz himself escapes. So then what happens?
Yeah, Ziz literally, Ziz fakes a medical emergency and then in the hospital just leaves. But they go on the run at this point. A lot of the Zizians are on the run. It's not entirely clear if this is connected, but in 20 or like not connected as in like causal, but it's the same people involved. But they end up shooting Jamie Zacco's parents, right? So Jamie Zacco is another one of these, another one of the Zizians, and they get in some confrontation with Jamie's parents, Richard and Rita, and end up shooting both of them.
Wow.
And then this is caught on camera, but they don't catch them. The police don't catch them in the act, but this is just another thing that starts the investigation running even further.
So now the murder count is up to 3, or at least the attempted murder count, because what's his name doesn't actually die.
Yeah, so
the landlord
Curtis,
doesn't die.
Yeah, I forgot to, or no, I think I did mention this. So Curtis actually survives. He's taken to the hospital and he lives, but I guess they kind of take revenge on him, because in like 2025, let me try to find this. Let me scroll down.
Yeah, they go
on
back.
On January 17th, 2025, they find him in Vallejo, and I think they stab him again. Yeah, they stab him again, and
this poor landlord, he's just being constantly attacked by the cult. And so they get him? Do they actually kill him this time?
Yeah, and this time,
horrible.
This
poor
time he does die.
Oh my God! Imagine being Curtis Lind. You're just living your life. Okay, so yeah, wouldn't want to be a landlord in San Francisco area these days. But okay, so wow, but so that's later. But so these two already kill the parents of one of them, and then they're back on the run again. They've now killed or tried to kill 3 people, and then what happens?
Yeah, so this is so after they kill Curtis, this is 2025. This is when there's just much more investigation. There's now an I believe this is an FBI investigation into all of them, the entire Zizian group, and then they end up essentially tracing all of these people. So one of the people who was involved with the second murder of Lind, Maximilian Snyder or Audrey, I think either applied for a marriage or got the marriage with Teresa Youngblood, and so they were immediately suspicious of Teresa as well. They were following, her, him, this person's movements, and this was what ended up leading off to the shootout with Border Patrol, because Teresa and another Zizian, Felix / Ophelia, were crossing the Canadian border. So it was not the southern border. It was the northern border. They were crossing the northern border, and
into Canada or into America?
Into Canada.
Yeah, they were trying to escape to Canada. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they were a few miles from the Canadian border. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they end up stopping. Border Patrol stops their car. They find Teresa. They find Ophelia, and Ophelia just starts shooting and kills one of the Border Patrol agents. The other one returns fire, kills Ophelia, wounds Teresa, I believe, and eventually takes Teresa into custody.
Whoa. So body count now 4 or 5. And
yeah, four if it's just the homicides, and then they kind of indirectly caused. Police argue they indirectly caused Emma's death, who was one of the ZIZIANS, but died when someone else tried to stab Curtis, and caused, I think, a few other suicides, at least one as well.
Yes. Okay, so the body count is going. Somebody says these are the real dark elves. Yeah, that's right. This is the true.
Yeah, very.
You want to see what the dark elves are? These are the dark elves.
No, so dark MAGA. This is used in the correct the correct etymological way of dark.
This is elite human capital in action. So that's okay. So all right. Okay, but then so you have this. We still don't know where Ziz is. This is like very Charles Manson. The whole time, everybody's dying, people are being killed, and the actual leader of the cult is nowhere to be found. So, and this is January. This is like 5 minutes ago. So this is actually very contemporaneous. Okay, so then tell us what happens next. Everybody else, I'm assuming, is in jail by now or dead. So Ziz is still on the loose, the main cult leader.
Yeah, there are a few other people who are still at large, but yeah, Ziz is one of the main people.
Oh yeah, and Zako, the son of the dead couple, is also still on the loose. So okay, we got both of them.
And then they do the same thing that they did before with Curtis Lynn's lot, but they do it in somewhere else in Maryland. So on the complete other side of the country, like close to as far away as you can get. Not quite, but like very close to as far away as you can get from California. And they do the same thing. They're holed up in these box trucks in Maryland, and then police get a tip like, what's with these people? You know, the owner is like, what's with these people in box trucks? A little bit suspicious. So they get this tip from someone who's suspicious of some people in box trucks, and they come in and they find Ziz, they find Jamie Sacco, and they find Daniel Blank there, and they arrest them all. And this time there's no shootout. They just arrest them. Ziz does the classic kind of, pretending to be limp, pretending to be dead thing.
Dead move.
They finally take him into custody.
Okay, so they finally get him. They finally get Ziz and the three others. It's also funny because it's in rural Maryland. It's funny that's where Vibe Camp is, but or at least was. The second time?
I never put the two together. Maybe that's why. Maybe they're going to protest Vibe Camp.
They love rural Maryland. But, okay, so, all right. So now Ziz is in jail. And where are we at today? I mean, what are the charges? Do we know, is the trial coming up? Is Ziz writing? Do we know what's the current update?
So, yeah, I'm just Googling now because I haven't.
No, it's fine. It's all good.
The update as of the article was, I think they have charges of attempted murder on the first Curtis Lind case, accessory to murder for many of the others, and then. I'm just trying to trace this through right now.
Yeah, like what are the charges? I just wonder if Ziz is getting charged with murder, or what are the actual charges? It's also like we don't know too much about. I guess the reason Ziz became the leader is just because he was writing about the ideas a lot. Like he was sort of the spiritual leader, basically, right?
Yeah, and I think spiritual and practical leader, right? Or organizational leader, like the one giving the instructions and leading the, reprogramming sessions and so on.
Yeah. Oh, here's the charges. The charges are in this less wrong thing. So definitely disorderly conduct, obstruction, blah blah blah. This is for the Pennsylvania thing, and then this is the county of. Yeah, I don't see any murder. I don't see any murder here. So I don't know, but maybe this is maybe it's somewhere else.
Yeah, I think in one of the, let me try to find this now. So one of the articles reporting on the first Curtis Lind incident, so the attempted murder, the unsuccessful murder, said that they were arrested on attempted murder charges. However, yeah, I'm trying to find that now.
Yeah. Okay. So very, very interesting. And so what we have here, the reason why this is so significant is because we're really dealing with like a very modern thing. Like we're really dealing with something that is like not ever has happened before. Like Manson was truly a function of his time, right? And this is truly a function of our time. Like these people could only exist now. And what do they tell us about the state of the internet and the state of our time? You know, if Manson was it's funny. One thing that's always surprised me about Manson is that boomers view him as Satan, right? Like they view him as like the embodiment of evil. You hear that a lot of times. You hear Manson is the embodiment of evil. And that's always been very curious to me because it seems like there's a lot of like way more evil people than Charles Manson to me, because Charles Manson didn't actually kill anybody. I mean, he like vaguely kind of killed one guy, but he didn't do the murders that he's famous for. So why is Manson the evil, right? And the reason is because for this exact reason that we just said. He took the hippie ideology and he ruined the whole party because he took it all the way. Like he took it too far. Right. Yeah. He took it to the point where it was like, all right, hippies, well, you care about race, you care about all these things. Let's kill the rich people. Let's kill the celebrities. You know, who cares? And that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. It's like he's taken this sort of ideology that defines our times, which is effective altruism, and he's taken it to the evil degree, kind of. Is that what do you think of that?
It's interesting because, on one hand, I am like basically a free speech absolutist. I think, you should the First Amendment precedent should hold. Anything, you that's protected by like current First Amendment jurisprudence should keep being protected. But on the other hand, it's like, if you think the world is going to end, like if I believe the world is going to end, I would at least be a lot more likely to, just do things, right? Do crazy things. So it's not completely clear if you can draw that line, right? I mean, obviously there's a line in that, some people actually murdered people, and, most people have not actually murdered people. But I think it's less clear. I guess in some ways you can say that like some of the Pan-Africanists, directly led to the Weather Underground or to the Black Panthers and so on. It's the same deal, right? Where there's a kind of very militaristic movement, a movement that has at least strong allusions, if not direct references, to the idea that this is equivalent to like actual bloodshed, or that actual bloodshed and slavery and violence is happening. And, and the implication is like, and we should retaliate, right? But there's this pattern throughout history where there's, the radicals that say things, and it's kind of good that we can't arrest the radicals just for kind of saying an ideology that kind of implies these things, as long as they don't actually do anything. And then there's the people who actually do those things, right? And it often turns out to be the case that they're not, completely separate, that they're communicating with each other, that they know each other, so on and so forth. So I think it's really hard to separate.
Yeah. Right. It does implicate free speech. It also implicates, again, like a certain level of idealism. It's it's like there's a dark side to idealism. There's a dark side to idealism, and I think that particularly godless idealism, it comes with this risk. It comes with this really because if you don't believe in God, right? If you don't have the commandments, and basically your main commandment is don't kill, you can pretty much justify anything. Like if you really believe, as you're saying, if you really believe that any ideology, if you really believe any earthly ideology all the way, yeah, it can lead you to do anything. I mean, it's the Nazis, right? I mean, you can basically justify any behavior at all because you can just be like, oh, well, our goal is to make the world and as perfect as possible based on the ideology that we see fit. And you know what? We're going to have to break a few eggs to make that happen. And there's something like so deeply evil about that, right? Because it's like it's so purposeless. It's like they're living this ridiculous fantasy, and it's like, what are they really using it to do? They're using it to kill people that they just simply don't like, And it's like there's something so much worse about that than just killing people you don't like. You know what I mean? There's something worse about it for some reason, because it's like it's allowing people who should know better off the hook, maybe.
Yeah, or like defrauding billions of dollars in the case of Sam Bankman-Fried, right?
Yeah, well, what do you mean by that?
So Sam Bankman-Fried was at least self-proclaimed, fully motivated by effective altruism.
Yeah, right. Okay. But is that
and some people will say like, oh, he that was his branding. But he was involved in effective altruism before FTX.
Yeah.
So he was thoroughly for a long time involved with effective altruism, said publicly that he was motivated by effective altruism, spoke at all of these effective altruism events, gave at least hundreds of millions, maybe billions, to effective altruistic charities, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and it's the same deal, right? If you really do think the world is going to end, then so what if we defraud a few people?
Right, exactly. And you're right. It's the same. You're right. It's the same exact thing. Anything is allowable at that level because, because it's like, oh, well, I can do, in a lot of ways I see this. I worry about the people on the right. By the way, this is the Ziz. I think his Facebook account is still up. Look at this. It's actually kind of a cool PFP you got there, Ziz. And look, 50%. This is the end of modern first world civilization as we know it. Says Ziz in April of 2020. What is he referring to? Oh, lockdown. Okay, yeah. Here we go. Sincerely, intersex. Amazing that this is still open. This is the Facebook account here. I think Sincerely is down, but wait, maybe advance. Can we see it? Proceed to Sincerely.
I don't remember if this was
it's
archive or something, but as of the time of writing, which is like a month ago-ish, month and a half ago, it was still up. It might have been a mirror.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, fascinating. So one thing that bothers me, as I was saying, is about the right now is, and somebody was actually
you can read the blog itself.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to sincerely.blogmirror, let me just send it to you in the
sincerely.blogmirror. Here we go. Wow, great aesthetic. Okay, I shouldn't say this, but good aesthetics from old Ziz here.
Many
don't murder
crazy
people. Yeah,
many such crazy people with good aesthetics.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. Wow. Here.
But you were saying about people on the right.
Blog.murder here. Yeah. So intersex brains and conceptual warfare. This is all total BS. It's so funny that it's like I guarantee that Ziz is probably very smart, but there's not all this intersex brain stuff is complete BS. But anyway, so one thing that it worries me about people on the right, it's like, yeah, there's no intersex brain. It's like they use this one study to say that men's brains, trans people's brains are different than the default, and that's not true. It's they found that there's like chemical differences in a trans person's brain, but they're not the other sex's brain. It just means that their brains like work differently than basically the standard, which is like, yeah, well, no, if you're really depressed, of course your brain's going to work differently. So that's total bullshit. But anyway, so what worries me on the right is not, it doesn't worry me, but I notice on the right, like there's this new acceptance of friend enemy, right? Or there's this new acceptance of even what I do, the necessity of patronage or the necessity of publicity. And I feel like a lot of this stuff is great, and it's learning tactics, it's learning how to win. All that stuff is very true. But on the other hand,
yeah, and rules of radicals, yeah.
Right. You do notice that a lot of it is like, okay, so are we just now free to do whatever we want? Like, are we just now like is now okay? Well, there's no rules now, right? And I think being a good person is like grappling with that, grappling with like which rules do you break? Which rules are okay to break? Which morals are okay to break? And I think the killing people thing is like, that's really just never okay. But I don't know. What do you think? How do you know which things you're allowed to break it up? Because I'm sure we could all think of examples in which killing people actually is necessary, right? So how do we think about it?
I think killing people is bad.
Okay, good hot take.
Yeah. What's interesting about the right is like I'm really not sure which way it goes, because on some hand it's just like, okay, you shouldn't listen to your HR lady as often. It's like that's like a version of rule defiance. I don't even know if it's technically legal, like defiance of the actual law or not, but that's like something a version of defying rules that's like just completely fine, basically, right? And then there's all the way to murder, and it's like really unclear. The thing about the right is that it always feels like everything is in flux. That's the thing that I've noticed. It's true about tariffs, it's true about foreign policy. In some sense, that's great, right? Like everything's up for debate, everything could change, it's really dynamic, it's really lively. On the other hand, certain things like killing people, I would genuinely like not to be up for debate. Maybe it should like theoretically be legal as long as it's not, direct, direct, incitement. But in general, I think we would be better off if we did not often discuss the merits of killing people. I think that in general, that should be off the table.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course I agree. Yeah, it's true. And it's right. It's like there's these ideologies that seize the moment. And it's like when they're not religious, when they're non-religious ideologies, and they're taken to the point of like retrofitting the world in the name of this ideology. I mean, that's what went wrong also with communism, right? I mean, that's also what went wrong with not fascism as an ideology, but with the Nazis. That really was, it's like these earthly, there's something like evil about taking an earthly ideology to its extreme. And there's something bad about that. And it's right. It's like if you're if you're trying to murder based on an earthly ideology, in some ways it's actually worse than murdering for resources, right? I mean, in some ways it's like what do we call all of our sports teams? We call all of our sports teams the Raiders, the Indians, the Vikings, the
Predators.
every single one of our, not every single, but many of our sports teams are rating societies, right? Like we are absolutely terrified of rating societies in the sense that, the actual Apaches were like the scariest thing ever. But we also like love them at some weird level. Like we like, we kind of also love rating societies, but we hate the opposite of rating societies, which is like ideological killers. It's just like a very gross, inhuman thing.
Well, it's a horseshoe theory, right? They're both killing people. I think we're right to generally hate when people kill other people, but there's something very important in the godlessness, right? C.S. Lewis quote, the man who stops believing in God will believe in anything.
Right.
I think there's something there, and especially with the ZIZIANS, to some degree with Jim Jones. Well, I guess he believed in God in his own way. But certainly with the ZIZIANS, certainly with some of these more New Age ideologies, certainly with communism, there's this idealistic impulse, right? There's this impulse that things have to be better. There has to be a world where everything works, where all of these complex pieces all fit together in a nice, beautiful, perfect way. And some people just want that. And I think it's just much, much, much healthier for society if those people are priests or rabbis or in the monastery or Buddhist monks or there are certain austere religious scholars that maybe they should not be, but other, religious scholars. And there is something about really depriving those people of an outlet for that idealism that does, I think, in a roundabout way, result in this violence.
Yeah. Well, you mean the fact that, like, in today's world, somebody like Ziz can't go join the clergy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, it's not quite that bad because you can join the clergy, right? You can, but that's not, for some people especially, that's not a natural life path. And, I think that Ziz could have had a very healthy life, in a monastery, maybe saying some somewhat heretical things, having some strange interpretation of some texts, but not killing anyone.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so interesting about religion. It's like, for some reason, religion does such a better job dealing with these instincts in a productive way than does politics, right?
Well, it's because there's something holding you back.
Right.
If your life is all there is, if you only live once, which I think is a very sinister slogan, if you really only live once, right, then some of these maximal instincts, you have to exercise them before you die.
Right, because what's the point?
Most of the ways that people exercise them before they die, instead of, theorizing, thinking about what will happen to them in their afterlife, most of the ways that people exercise them before they die are incredibly destructive.
Yeah. Right. And totally. So what do you think, let's talk about this for the last 15 minutes. What do you think happens? Has this impacted the EA community? Like, is this kind of the end? Like really, Manson was kind of the end of the road for the hippies. And then after that, I mean, when did Manson get arrested? Was that 69? Literally everything happened in 69. Manson arrest. When was this? When did he get arrested? Who knows? Yeah, 69, I think. Yeah, 69. So, there we enter the 70s where it becomes a lot more about like, introspection, and it's a lot less of this idealism. So, do you see now, I mean, and then also this is happening right as Trump is getting elected. Do you see this as kind of the end of an era for effective altruism, or where does effective altruism in this whole world go from here?
I think it was already on the decline. In late 2022, Tyler Cowen, and whatever you think of Tyler Cowen, this was like such a
I
big
actually don't think any of a thing
He-
about Tyler Cowen because I don't even know who he is, besides that he just got hired by Free Press. I think I saw that, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a kind of like economist, like libertarian, but he went to one of the effective altruism conferences in like end of 2022. And at the effective altruism conference, he was like, "This is peak EA. It never gets better than this." And then like literally months afterward, FTX goes bankrupt, Sam Bankman-Fried gets arrested, and that was, I think, the actual big tipping point in effective altruism, because more than half of their funding vanished, like more than half of their total funding in the entire ecosystem vanished. A lot of it got clawed back by the FTX collections people, and there just ended up being a much more there ended up being much more hesitancy for mainstream associations, mainstream institutions to associate with them. I think that was the real start of the decline. And then the second big hit was when Trump won and then removed a lot of the Biden White House people that they had embedded, that especially the AI people were, really, really connected to.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think they've been on the downturn for several years now, I guess 2 years now. And will the ZIZIANS change? Maybe it'll be one of those things where in hindsight, that's what's remembered as the thing that killed them. But I can't see it mattering more than Sam Bankman-Fried.
Right.
That was the big pivot point.
Interesting. Interesting. So what happens now? I mean, where do you see this, the culture, the religious side of tech, which is kind of what this is? Where do you see that going from here?
Well, there's a kind of counter elite, and sometimes this gets overblown, of like Christians in tech, Christians in the Bay Area. There are a few articles about this now. I know some of the people involved who I think are genuine Christians and are coming to church and are seeing this God-shaped hole and thinking, what if I fill the God-shaped hole with God? And I think, I'm a Christian myself. I think that's largely for the better. And I'm kind of optimistic about that side. It's sort of like the mirror image of the effective altruists, where the effective altruists are kind of like hyper secularism, or like God is in the future and God is evil, which is basically their conception of AI. I know that I realize in hindsight that's a kind of like very big sentence, but that is unironically the sincere belief of many effective altruists, is that AI, like people researching AI, are basically creating God, and that God is evil and will kill everyone. That is not an exaggeration of like the median like AI safety person's belief. But I think that there are elements that are kind of heading for the better in the Bay. I'm sort of wish casting here. I don't really have that much evidence to support it, but I think we're due for a great awakening. I hope there's a great awakening, that more people become basically normie Christians. I think, like we were talking about, I think that's a path to a much healthier life for a lot of people. A lot of people who feel dissatisfied with the modern world. I think it's led to a much healthier life for me. I converted at 17, so I think Christianity's good. I think more people should be Christian, and I hope.
What did you convert from?
Just being like atheist, secular, or agnostic.
And you became Catholic?
No, I'm Protestant.
Oh, okay. So what did you have to do to convert?
Basically, take some number of courses, ultimately get baptized, That's basically it. And like, sincerely believe, of course. And the actual journey is much longer and much more complex, but at a at a at a practical level, the conversion process, like the official process, was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. What can you say? What type you are?
So my church is basically Baptist, but not
Interesting.
entirely affiliated with any Baptist convention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like in a way, these ideologies, they are religions, and they're like pagan religions. Like it's like they're kind of like praying
I
to
don't
the
think that's
water
true.
god.
I think like if you believe in like Zeus and Athena and Hera and so on, and Poseidon, you don't do a lot of the things that these people do. It's like there's nothing beyond us except maybe like the things that we create, right? That's
Right.
the
That's
that's the
fair.
like modern tech religion.
Right.
And I think like the comparison to pagan is unfair to the pagans.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we don't want to be putting down the pagans in that way. No, that's fair. Because you're right. At least the pagans believe there's something higher, right? That's the point you're making. Whereas these
Yeah,
people
yeah,
don't believe there's
exactly.
anything higher. Like, yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, okay. Very cool, man. Well, all right. Anything else you want to say? I think we can wrap up here. Yeah, any other denouement to the story of the ZIZIANS? What's anything else to say?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay.
I think, or one thing I guess does come to mind, which is like, I think more and more people are realizing the secular race to totalitarianism. I think that people are realizing. So one of the people I spoke to today was um, was a kind of left of center journalist, and basically brought up like Musk and the simulation hypothesis. Musk believes that like we're all in a simulation, and that the goal of the simulation is to win the game basically, and win the race to AI, and that most people are NPCs. And he basically said like he thought this was a very dangerous way of thinking about your fellow humans. And I basically think that's true. I think that's true of not just Musk, but of the EAs, of a lot of the kind of atheist utilitarians. And I think there is a growing awakening that you have to believe in something greater, and that you have to believe in something greater to avoid this race to totalitarianism. I think that Peter Thiel is one of the people who is realizing this. He now talks often about the Antichrist and the Catacon, which I think basically reference these like two forms of dueling totalitarianism. Something that he gets from Schmidt's book Nomos of the Earth, by the way, which I think that so many people have like mentioned Thiel inventing like the reading of the Catacon and the Antichrist, and it annoys me.
What is this? What is
But
the catacon and the Antichrist?
so yeah. So the Catacon and the Antichrist originally comes from the Bible, and is so the Antichrist is the imitation of Christ by the devil that comes when Revelation happens. The world's about to end, and he becomes the ruler of all nations on earth. That's the main biblical prophecy about the Antichrist. And the Catacon is essentially the force that is the force or the being that is restraining the Antichrist from coming to power. And
The catacon.
yeah, so there are various biblical readings of this. Thiel's reading, which I think draws heavily on not just on Rene Girard, which he's talked about publicly, but also on Nomos of the Earth, on Carl Schmitt, is essentially that the Antichrist is this desire towards a one world government, towards homogeneity, and towards a kind of apocalypticism, right? Whether you see that with COVID, whether you see that with some of the AI people, so on. And the Catacon is like the political will to restrain it, right? And he says like the race between the Catacon and the Antichrist is very dangerous because the Catacon can give way to the Antichrist, right? It's this classic political argument where if you say, we need these political powers to fight back against the Antichrist, then those political powers can then be repurposed and turned into something that ends up being used for the Antichrist or by the Antichrist. And so it's this political escalation that it's very hard to see a way out of, right? You just see more and more escalation, more and more power grabbing, to your point about the right, more and more willingness to break rules, and the only off-ramp is if you believe in like the actual God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it just all comes down to the oneness. Like, I've always been a believer, but to me, it's like you just arrive. I really actually think what God is sort of the total opposite of what most people think. Like, God is not like, at least in my Jewish conception of it, I think it's really like it's everything, right? It's everything, and everything is one thing. And so you're not saying there's a man in the sky. It's you're just saying that like there's something much greater than you that you're participating in, and it's a belief in this thing that you're participating in, and these thoughts that you have to yourself of being good, of being meaningful, of wanting to help, of standing for things. This is all coming from this same thing. And I think it's like once you start believing that, you just see evidence of it everywhere. I mean, I don't know. It seems like so obvious to me, I guess. But and also, yeah, it's like once you start going against that, you just fail. Like you go crazy and you start to do things that are extremely selfish or extremely irrational, I guess, which is funny because it's like this is all supposedly all about rationality, right?
Yeah, Ross Douthat in his new book talks about many paths to belief, how people should be curious, and I think that it's socially beneficial for more people to be curious about really many forms of belief, even though he's a Catholic. I personally believe I hear this may be a common belief that God is our Father in heaven, our Creator, and is also the Son of God and the Son of Man who came to earth and died for our sins, and also the Holy Spirit, which runs through all of us. But I think that if you believe in something greater than yourself, that's the first step, and that probably takes the edge off a lot of the idealism as well.
It's just bowing to something that's just more powerful than yourself. Right? It's like it's saying, and once you're connected into it, it's like I was really surprised to learn that Kanye disavowed Jesus. Did you see that? I was very surprised because I was like, I feel like once you sort of lean into it, like it's kind of hard to get out of it.
Was
but
it
I
because
guess
Jesus was a Jew?
Yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe it was a reverse thing. But anyway, all right. Thank you so much, Brian. You're definitely one of the best guys around, and so everybody should listen to you. You have many genius takes on many things. I hope your audience continues to grow. It seems like you've been doing a great job. And yeah, anytime. Come on anytime, and great to see you.
Yeah, glad to. I've been really enjoying writing about more things as I have, at least temporarily, more time. And the best place to find all of that is From the New World. From the New .world is the link. And I hope everyone enjoys. And thank you so much for having me on, Isaac. You run a great program. Love listening. And love reading from time to time, too.
Yeah, I know. I need to write more. It's the one thing. It's, of course, the most important thing, and it's the thing I never have time for. But, and my camera's dying at the same time. Okay, thanks, man. See you later.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks again, Isaac. Bye.
Peace.